Hi everyone, welcome back to The Vegan Atheist. This week, I resurrect the Stupid Meat Eater comment series, which last saw the light of day in November of 2014. You've asked for it on my poll, so I shall deliver. In this episode, I critique Lierre Keith, author of The Vegetarian Myth, on Steven Crowder's podcast Louder with Crowder. Lierre, a longtime vegan gone meat eater, and Steven, a far-right political commentator, discuss veganism and animal agriculture. As always, I'd love to hear what you think on the subject matter of the video, and if you like my channel and the content I produce, nothing helps me reach a wider audience than likes, shares, and comments. Now, with all that self-serving stuff out of the way, let's get started.
We are back with a guest who actually, it's funny, I'm a big fan of some of the stuff she's written and she's done. We certainly don't agree on a lot. But on some things, she's incredibly informative, and I'm really glad to have her on, author of The Vegetarian Myth.
Lierre Keith, the author of the 2009 book entitled The Vegetarian Myth, Food Justice and Sustainability, claims to have been a vegan for over 20 years. She blames her vegan diet for her numerous chronic health problems. She did a 180 and now eats a meat-focused menu and devotes a lot of her life to combating the vegan movement. Her book has come under a lot of scrutiny due to its lack of primary sources and reliance on the opinions of her favorite popular authors, who they themselves do not provide any primary sources. Additionally, Lierre has an indebted relationship to the Weston A. Price Foundation, a non-credible organization founded by a dentist in the 1930s who made sweeping assertions on human health based on his observations of indigenous populations. The Weston A. Price Foundation has taken to champion a pro-meat and dairy agenda and takes on the growing vegan movement. Steven Crowder is a conservative political commentator, Christian, and host of Louder with Crowder, a podcast primarily covering politics and culture. Now, with that background info out of the way, let's get on with it.
Why don't you tell them your story?
Right. So I spent 20 years as a vegan. I became a vegan when I was 16, the way that most people become vegans, which is I had a friend who was a vegan, and she and her family were really into being vegan. And within 2 weeks of knowing her, I was completely convinced that I had to do this. Most people actually who try it give up in 3 months. That's what the studies show. And I did not give up for 20 years. And in the process, completely destroyed my health. It was just an utter collapse.
Lierre makes sweeping assertions about why people go vegan and how long they stay vegan. She claims that most vegans choose this diet or worldview because of exposure by a vegan friend. This may be true for some, but she does not give any citations to corroborate her claims, not even in her book. The same can be said regarding her statements that most new vegans give it up within 3 months. Even if it were to be true, what does that say about veganism? It says more about human nature and our inability to keep to major changes that impact our daily lives on so many levels than some kind of blight against veganism. Going vegan ought to be an informed decision based upon knowledge acquired through credible sources, not a decision based on acquiring friendships, standings in social circles, or an appeal to emotion.
So I spent a good 4 or 5 years after that trying to figure out what had I done wrong. Because I hadn't done the diet wrong. So why did this go so wrong?
Lierre asserts that her health degraded after going vegan. She also asserts that she knew exactly what she ought to be eating to be a healthy vegan, yet it did not help. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. Only Lierre knows what she was actually eating, so I can't claim that she was doing veganism wrong. From her book, Lierre states that she ate only carbohydrates, and if that's the case, it's little wonder she got ill. Our bodies need more than carbs to be healthy. We also need to consume fats, protein, vitamins, and minerals to keep our bodies in optimal health. A carb-focused diet is not healthy. Lierre has also stated elsewhere that she has been battling health issues her whole life, even before her years as a vegan. Perhaps her angst against veganism is due to the realization that a vegan diet is not a cure for all your ailments. Some vegans make grand claims stating that a vegan diet makes you immune to cancers and other diseases. This is simply not true. What is true is that eating a balanced vegan diet decreases your risk of many serious illnesses, but there is no magic cure. Knowledgeable health professionals who keep up to date with peer-reviewed studies state without question that a properly planned vegan diet is healthy for all stages of life. I don't know about you, but I take my dietary advice from dietary and medical professionals, not anecdotal personal experience from a disgruntled ex-vegan.
It's no secret with people listening here, whether online or terrestrially, that I have a passionate disdain for veganism. I hate this idea that if you eat animals, you hate animals. I mean, we have a dog who, we adopted because we love it. We're animal lovers, but I don't see it as something that is unnatural or goes against nature or in any way displays hatred because of the way we are designed as human beings.
I'm not sure where Stephen gets the impression that vegans believe if you eat animals, you hate animals. I don't think I've ever thought that. I'm not a vegan because I hate plants. I'm a vegan because I can see the harm to animals, the planet, and to myself caused by animal agriculture. I think what Stephen is picking up from vegans is anger and annoyance at the cognitive dissonance he and other animal-loving meat eaters exhibit. If you can love animals, care for them, acknowledge their ability to enjoy life and their ability to suffer, how can you then eat other animals who have the same capacity? I would imagine that Stephen and others like him attempt to resolve this dissonance by asserting the necessity of eating animal products to be healthy. If it were really necessary to eat animals to be healthy, then killing and eating them, however much we would not like it, would be necessary. The reality, however, is that eating animals for the large majority of people, especially in affluent countries, is not a necessity.
Yep. No, I mean, I got my dog for protection. So
Protection from vegans?
Yeah, well, yeah, I get a lot of death threats. That's my alarm system. I want them to see that. And I have a dog and I have a permit to carry. So yes, no, I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment as well. I think people have a right to defend themselves. And especially when you live under this kind of harassment, there's a point past which you just have to take it seriously.
Sure.
And I do. So they're crazy
absolutely.
people.
I'm sorry, but I have a hard time believing that Lierre actually receives legitimate threats against her life from anyone. What I imagine she gets is a lot of online hate, much like feminists Anita Sarkeesian and Sui Park. Online threats of violence are aplenty, and while I wish the internet wasn't a safe haven for immature people protected by a shroud of anonymity, it's unfortunately to be expected when you hold views that are in violent opposition with a large majority of people. Seems to me Lierre is living up to the SJW victimization card in order to garner sympathy for her cause.
The thing that I did not know when I was 16, agriculture is the most destructive thing that people have done to the planet. So I thought that I was eating this peaceful, loving, sustainable, totally compassionate diet. And it's not true. It is the most destructive human activity. And there's nothing environmental about this. It's been sold to us as the way to eat green. And nothing could be further from the truth.
So basically, if we go vegan, fast forward a couple hundred years, we're Lord of the Flies smacking chubby little piggy for his glasses to create a fire.
Yes. We are.
Wow. Doomsday fear tactics to bring out an emotional response. If we continue to farm the way we do, we are going down a path to further climate change and topsoil erosion. Agriculture is as a whole the most destructive human activity on the planet. What Lierre fails to mention is that much of the land-grown crops are destined not for direct human consumption, but instead animal feed. 70% of all agricultural land and 30% of the ice-free terrestrial surface of the planet is specifically devoted to grazing and growing crops for animal consumption. Sure, not all the land would be fit to grow crops for humans, but imagine how much land could be returned to its natural state if we didn't have 24 billion extra mouths to feed.
Vegetables. A lot of vegetables are not particularly edible until you cook them, first of all.
Right.
A lot of people want you to believe, a lot of the sort of raw vegan people, if they cook it, it's bad. And it's like, it's not actually edible till you apply heat because you have to destroy what are called anti-nutrients.
Right.
Plants fight back. Plants don't really want to be eaten either. They can't run and they don't have teeth and claws like animals. So their only defense are chemicals. And they are the original chemical warfare people. They know how to make chemicals that can hurt you and that can protect themselves and protect their babies, essentially.
Sure, there's a lot of vegetables that ought to be cooked in order to make the nutrients found within bioavailable. Raw food is not necessarily more healthy than cooked, and therefore I would not recommend a 100% raw diet, as they have been demonstrated to be lacking. At this point in the interview, Lierre veers the conversation into a very bizarre direction by calling plants the original warfare people, with babies that have wants, desires, and knowledge. Plants, especially the ones we grow for human consumption, show no signs of anything we would consider sentience, sapience, or the capacity to have desires or thoughts. They lack a central processing organ like a brain. They lack a nervous system that transmits signals of pain and pleasure. If plants have some rudimentary sentience, it is well beyond our capacity to observe. Lierre belies a motive in speaking about plants in such anthropomorphic terms. She wants to suggest that vegans are just as immoral to kill a kale plant as a meat eater is to kill a cow. This is akin to a religious apologist claiming that atheists have faith too and are thus on equal playing fields. This is just ridiculous. The reason sentience evolved into animals is because it afforded us a survival advantage. Sentience is an animal's ability to consciously interact with the world around it, escape dangers, and find pleasures. Since plants are affixed to the ground, they have no means of escape. A plant with sentience would just sit there screaming in silence as it was consumed because it would have no means of even moving an inch. Plants with or without sentience would have an equal chance of survival, so sentience would not provide a benefit.
Just look at the scope of human history, 2.5 million years, and there's no question to archaeologists what we ate. There's no question.
Right.
The only people who come up with these just so stories are people who are very ideologically driven. And the evidence is just overwhelming. You can see in the bones and the teeth of the skeletons, you can see that these people ate mostly meat. You see the tools that they left behind. You see the pictures they drew about it. And then their campsites are filled with these remains. And there's just no question what we ate. And you can also look at contemporary hunter-gatherers. There are still 46 tribes remaining of hunter-gatherers, and we know what they eat.
Here is a classic example of the naturalistic fallacy. That which is deemed natural is good. Since our ancestors ate a certain way, we therefore should learn from them and follow their lead. I'm sorry to break this to you, but our ancestors were primitive beings who knew next to nothing about the world and nutrition and did what they could to survive. It would make as much sense to eat as our ancestors did as it would to adopt their ideas of morality. We know more about nutrition now than at any point in our history, so it makes absolutely no sense to romanticize the past in an attempt to justify today's barbarism. On the point about indigenous people today living in hunter-gatherer communities, they are mostly very isolated groups of people with no formal education, living with passed-down knowledge accumulated through the generations. No great insights are found here on how we ought to live.
Their health declines rapidly. It was actually a complete disaster for human health when people switched from these nutrient-dense diets based on animals to diets based strictly on carbohydrate. And the archaeological record could not be clearer. Their bones just crumble, their teeth fall out, and they shrink 6 inches almost immediately.
Geez.
Crumbling bones, falling out teeth, and stunted growth. Are you frightened yet? You shouldn't be. If the picture that Lierre was painting was accurate, human civilization ought to have died out centuries ago. Farming has been with us for tens of thousands of years, replacing the need for humans to be dependent on hunting animals for survival. Her comments are nothing more than utilizing fear to manipulate an audience to believe that humans ought to return to the diet of our ancient ancestors.
Well, a lot more doctors are coming around. This is pretty much every day in the news you can find, another study that shows, saturated fat actually doesn't hurt people.
Right.
We were wrong. It was even on the cover of Time, where they're like, oops, butter isn't bad.
Every day you can find a new study, often taken out of context by the media, making all sorts of claims regarding what foods are good and what foods are bad for us. Some of those studies are paid for by industries that have a monetary incentive to receive a favorable result. Journalists who are not medical or dietary professionals write news articles with eye-grabbing titles in order to grab the public's attention, all in an effort to sell advertising space. Lierre is no better. She clearly doesn't understand the science of nutrition, as is demonstrated with her assertion that saturated fat is actually good for us. All major health organizations recommend the limiting of saturated fat consumption. The American Heart Association recommends limiting saturating fats, which are found in butter, cheese, red meat, and other animal-based foods. Decades of sound science have proven it can raise your bad cholesterol and put you at higher risk for heart disease. Again, I take my dietary advice from dietary and medical professionals with the backing of peer-reviewed research.
But you talk about how people say, animals weren't designed to be this way. And you use an example of maybe it's 50 million domesticated dogs versus 10,000 wild wolves. And how, it's sort of funny that we don't see that evolution from an animal perspective. These dogs have evolved to make themselves useful to human beings, and they live longer, healthier lives. So this idea that domestication of animals is inherently against some animal moral code could be backwards.
Does domestication of animals provide them with some benefit? Yes, definitely, if we are speaking in grander terms, taking the species as a whole. Animal agriculture has ensured that the domesticated animals will not go extinct because as long as the animals are useful to us, further generations will be bred into existence. This says nothing, however, about the individual animals suffering under confinement, often with ailments, living a fraction of the life they would otherwise have lived in the wild.
That most plants don't want much to do with us, but there's a few that figured, if we work together, it's going to go better for both of us.
Right.
And it's true. We've carried them all over the world. In the service of corn and soy and wheat, we've pretty well conquered the planet. There's a few, not a lot, but a few that were like, let's give it a try. And it's not, us doing something horrible to them or them doing something horrible to us. These are interdependent relationships.
A return to the discussion about plants and her bizarre anthropomorphic language. Plants don't have thoughts and desires about working with humans for the benefit of their survival. Just more of the same nonsense where Lierre attempts to level the moral playing field by suggesting that plants are sentient and therefore to kill them would be just as bad as killing a sentient animal. Ugh. Let's keep going. We're almost done.
And to me, I was thinking, you don't see the irony that your food dehydrator is the Auschwitz of asparagus.
Yeah, right. Well, this was a problem I had when I was a vegan because I didn't want to make those hierarchies, and yet I was. So meat eaters would sort of taunt me with that question about, well, what about the plants? And I never had a good answer because I didn't want to be the person that said, well, animals count, but plants are just dead matter. They're just insensate salads, and I'm allowed to just help myself because I didn't want to put forward those kinds of hierarchies. But I'm an apex predator. That's the role that humans play, just like wolves, just like bears. And, our job is to do that well.
Meat eaters taunt vegans about plant sentience because they don't have a valid rational argument against veganism, and therefore stoop to all sorts of ridiculous levels in order to justify their dietary choices. Even if it were true that the plants we eat are in some way sentient, it would still make sense to be a vegan due to the conservation of energy. Let me explain. If we grow a crop of plants to feed farmed animals, it will take a lot of plant material to grow the animal. There surely will be wasted energy, as a lot of the calories consumed by the animal will go towards keeping the animal warm and alive, and into non-consumable body parts such as bone, hair, cartilage, and organs. If instead we ate the plants directly, we essentially cut out the middleman and use the plant calories directly for our survival. Far fewer plants are killed by a vegan than by a meat eater eating a farmed animal. Lastly, while our intelligence as a species allows us to kill as apex predators, we are dependent on tools for success. In a one-on-one fight between a true apex predator and a human with nothing but our hands, we lose every time. Predators generally kill their prey because of necessity. They kill in order to survive. Human bodies do not require animal flesh or secretions to be healthy, and so regardless of our technical capabilities, killing animals for food should be a thing of our past. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button below. To ensure you don't miss out on future content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Want to have your say in what videos I produce? Have your desires known by voting in my online poll. Thanks for watching.